We're back for Your Ears Only. I'm David Alpern.
I'm Eddie Robinson with this quote from the news. Silence was seemingly impenetrable. That was Thomas E. Perez, Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, on roadblocks to the prosecution of 5 former New Orleans policemen who last week received sentences from 5 to 65 years in prison for shooting of 6 unarmed civilians, 2 fatally in the chaotic aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, then covering it up. Now this. Question. What do demonstrators demanding arrest of the killer of Trayvon Martin in Florida have in common with cheering crowds in Cairo's Tahrir Square celebrating their uprising there a year ago? Answer. Social media. With the swipe of a finger, individuals can organize groups and reach millions with pitches and plans at lightning speed in a more sophisticated, peaceful way than ever before, if they wish. Where activists once were defined by their causes, today they're also defined by their tools.
With social media networks like Facebook, Twitter, and Change.org, the traditional relationship between political authority or media judgment and the will of the people has been reversed, making it easier for the powerless to connect, coordinate, collaborate, locally, nationally, even globally. Within the past year alone, we've seen demonstrations and protests grow at record rates. The Occupy Wall Street movement, protests of the Arab Spring, and now public pressure on both sides in the Trayvon Martin case, including film director Spike Lee's retweet of an erroneous address linked to admitted killer George Zimmerman, whose lawyers last week stepped up their claims he was being beaten by the unarmed boy he then shot.
Lee later apologized to the elderly couple mistakenly bombarded by hate messages and settled with them financially. But then sometime TV hostess Roseanne Barr reportedly blundered in, tweeting the correct address of Zimmerman's parents to her 111,000 followers before realizing she'd violated Twitter rules. To help us sort through the powerful impact of social media, for better and worse, for Your Ears Only, we're pleased to welcome Dr. Janet Sternberg, Professor of Communication and Media Studies at Fordham University. Welcome to our program.
Thanks for inviting me.
Sociologists and communication experts at Fordham Social have been studying social media for years. What are your most important findings on its strengths and limitations?
Well, I think the most important thing to understand, first of all, is that there are both strengths and limitations. We tend to be blinded, I think, by the positive potential of social media, and we tend to focus mostly on what social media can do. And less frequently, we ask questions about what social media can undo and what sorts of limitations there are. We have media industries who are selling us these products and technologies are the cheerleaders, but we also need to have people who are asking questions about what the possible downside might be.
Yeah, we also see the limitations. We just did a segment on that included the Arab Spring, and we see that some of the dramatic successes initially seem to have run up against realities offline. But let me ask you, what's more important, the ability of social media to coordinate real-world actions, those protests, strikes, maybe worse, or its ability to multiply, magnify, solidify public sentiment, as in the pushback against increased charges proposed by Bank of America and Verizon some months ago?
Well, I think both aspects are important, but from a practical purpose, you're usually going to have more people as viewers, listeners, or readers of media than you will have people actually taking action. So while, yes, we can use social media to increase the likelihood that people will take up arms or, go to demonstrations or act on their beliefs, I think it's wise to realize that simply getting the message out to more people, the ability of social media to multiply the distribution and magnify public sentiment, I think that actually has perhaps a larger impact.
So those online petitions really can be powerful.
I think so, because even if we don't get everybody to sign an online petition, we bring issues to people's attention that they might not even have thought about it.
In the Trayvon Martin case, would you agree that social media really took off only after old media, TV and the press, had police audio and videotapes on which anger could focus?
Well, I think things happened, frankly, so fast that it's a little difficult to say which was the initial impact and which was a secondary impact. I think the important thing is to understand that the TV and the traditional media, the traditional press, are using social media among themselves, and they're also beginning to rely more and more on the public to bring media messages to the attention of the wider public, such as asking citizens to submit photographs if they're on the spot. But the idea that the police tapes, the audio and the videotapes in certain cases, basically they add fuel to the fire. They give social media commentators more material to discuss and to manipulate as well. The editing of some of these digital files is an important thing to think about.
Talk about the way China, for example, symbolizes the way autocratic regimes can also use the new technology.
Well, I think this is one of the areas we have to pay a lot more attention to, because when we look at some of the successful protests of the Arab Spring in Tunisia, Libya, and Egypt, what you have are regimes that are smaller in size and scale and not as technologically advanced as some of the other countries like China, which is fairly sophisticated in its manipulation of technology. We should also be aware that there are multinational companies, some of them housed in the United States, such as the company Cisco, which provides the routers that connect all of the Internet. Cisco has been extremely active in China, helping the Chinese government to install Internet and digital media services that will be able to be monitored and controlled. Some people suggest that what Cisco is doing and has done in China is maybe a testing ground for what they may be able to do in other countries, such as our own country. Any regime, whether it's an autocratic regime or a democratic regime, has the ability now, and ever more so, to block, shut off, control media connections, and when they leave the connections open, they can track and trace the activity through those connections.
Janet Sternberg is a professor of communication and media studies at Fordham University.
Quote from the news: "Scavenging through garbage bins for food and becoming a burden to my child." That was the fate that retired 77-year-old Greek pharmacist Dimitris Christoulas faced because of harsh government austerity measures required by international lenders to avoid default. Or so he wrote in a note before fatally shooting himself in Athens' Syntagma Square.
Next, how far Britain's Noel Coward took his talent to amuse, for your ears only.